Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Baggage Claim, a journey into mental illness. I'm Katrina.
I'm Julia, and this is a look at dealing with mental health in today's society. Tonight's episode is our very special election special. And we have a special guest. There's a whole lot of special going on tonight.
There is. Do you want to introduce? Or go ahead.
Sure. So to introduce our special guest for the evening, we have Mrs. Valerie St. Mrs. Washington American 2020. She is a counselor, MS LMHC. Is that right?
That is correct. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. I think this is a really great topic and a very relevant topic right now. And I'm excited to have some good conversations about it. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I do kind of want to wait for Mel to hop back on. I hate to.
Yeah, we don't want her to miss the fun.
I know. Like, come on, Mel. Where are you?
Wonder what happened.
I don't know. But today we will be talking about the election. We'll really kind of be talking about what we're going through and how we're dealing with that. We'll probably be asking Valerie tons of questions related to the election and what's going on and how to get through. No matter what side you're on, left or right, this is bipartisan completely. Here she is.
Welcome back, Mel.
There she is.
So yeah, to kick it off,
gotta get her earphones in. But go ahead, Julia.
Just to kick it off, I just wanted to say that just like Katrina just said, this is bipartisan. One thing we know right now is that everyone is panicking about politics, about the political election. Democrats, Republicans, independents, it doesn't matter who you are, you have election anxiety. And everyone is reporting that. And that's why we wanted to do this special nonpartisan episode about ways of dealing with anxiety and depression or whatever it is you're experiencing right now around the election. So just to give a couple stats to see where things stand, per a survey out right now from the American Psychological Association, nearly 70% of respondents reported that the elections are a significant source of stress. 70%. Mm-hmm. The survey also found that a majority, 77%, are worried about the country's future. And 71% said that this is the lowest point in our nation's history that they can personally remember. So those are some pretty bleak statistics.
Woo. But like relatable, like completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like I get it.
Understandable. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. You hear that and it's a big number, but totally understand. Yeah, you can relate for sure.
Mel, you're trying to talk, but we can't hear you. I think. Oh. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, those are, it kind of makes you just sad. Like, sad that it's all consuming and takes up so much of our lives. I know us girls, we talk about this kind of stuff every week, pretty much. Like, every time we have a meeting, we're talking about what's going on in the nation and politically.
Yeah. And, I kind of feel like that's a little bit different from how we all grew up. Because I don't know about you all, but when I grew up, politics was something, you knew that the grown-ups, they went and voted, but nobody really ever talked about it or who they voted for or how they voted. Now it's becoming much more commonplace for people to have these discussions and to have that be okay. And I think that's a good thing. I think the more that we can talk about these things in a healthy way, the better.
Yes, I completely agree. I think that's why this episode is so important. We just need to talk about and be open about and honest. I think, Valerie, you said it when we were doing our talk before the show that we always do. Be open and honest about how you're feeling and what you're going through. Like, you never know who can relate to that. And also, like, please comment. Like, if you have anything to add or anything to say, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, we want to know your experience. But to tag on to what Katrina was saying, I think it's so important that we destigmatize this right now as far as people who even need to seek help around how they're feeling around election issues, because there are many people who are experiencing a lot of anxiety, debilitating anxiety, and they do need to seek help. And there's kind of a stigma around that. And I think that it's important to remember that seeking help is never a sign of weakness. It's a sign of fortitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
How about now? Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. Welcome back.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Hey.
Michigan weather is like the political weather right now, and decided that it needed to, and everything comes down. I'm keeping it real here, folks. Okay, on election night, it's preseason for all of us.
Appreciate it, Mel.
And you know what? I had to get real stress in here because I wanted the people to really feel the anticipation. Oh my gosh, is Mel gonna be here? Is she gonna get on here, or is she gonna not ever leave here? That kind of thing. Like that
We were
would scare
on the edge of
people.
our seat.
Not ever leaving.
Mel's gonna get on here, but she's never gonna leave, and it's gonna be terrifying. No, I'm glad that we're able to have Valerie back and that we're able to talk about this stuff, because even having the warm up for this show and sitting down talking to you guys about what we were going to talk about tonight made me feel a little better, because I think that we have to start from a place of like, we're not alone out here feeling like scared and terrified of all these things that could possibly happen and possibly not happen by ourselves. So that's why I love our audience.
Yeah, I think you missed it,
Agreed.
Mel, but I was saying that 70% of people who have been surveyed reported feeling the stress of the election as a major contributor to anxiety. So it really is, we're really not alone.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great segue into something I just recently read about, which is election stress disorder. And this is something that came about within the last election, where therapists and psychologists have been noticing people talking about how much stress the political scene is causing in their life. And I could totally relate to that. So I'd love it, Valerie, your kind of opinion. Have you heard of this? Have you seen anything like this?
Yes, actually, in my own practice, as we mentioned, I'm a licensed mental health practitioner, and I see clients weekly, daily. And there has definitely been an increase in mental health symptoms, and specifically anxiety and depression, as related to what's going on right now, given the election, especially such a big election, which has a monumental impact on our everyday lives. In the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of a major, social issues situation going on, in the midst of all of these very big, just these situations that are really causing all of us to, with the isolation, to really kind of take a look at what's going on around us, and being kind of, I'm trying to find the words to say what I'm trying to say here, being so socially isolated, it's just been really hard to navigate through that, to be able to process through it. Sometimes when we're connecting with people every day and talking with people every day, we can have a little bit of a mirror, so we can understand, have somebody to bounce our ideas and thoughts and feelings off of, and vice versa, and have that camaraderie. But when we don't have that, we kind of just like sit here with these feelings and wonder, and we feel alone. So yes, as a long answer to your question, I have seen definitely an influx of those types of symptoms and people coming in specifically related to the election and to the current climate right now. Now, election stress disorder is something that is very real. As you said, Kat, it's something that's been a term that's been coined by psychologists and psychiatrists, and the medical field has acknowledged it as something significant. It is not a medically diagnosed disorder, like it's not in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, but there are enough people who are experiencing these symptoms that it does have its own place, its own category, and its own term now.
Wow.
I know, right? I would have never thought.
I think I've heard that people are reporting that they're having panic attacks, stress headaches, stomach aches, insomnia. The whole 9 yards.
Yep.
I
The
wonder.
typical like anxiety symptoms, just specifically associated and correlated with issues concerning the election. It's very similar to, I don't know if you all have heard of this headline stress disorder. This has been
No,
around.
this is no.
This has been around. I don't know for how long, but another unofficial, category of anxiety that we're seeing in the mental health field. Again, not a diagnosable, category or diagnosis, but just something unofficial that we're all noticing.
And I'm guessing that's just from the headlines that you see from day to day. Like, wow.
From the
Anxiety
headlines
that
that
it
pop-
causes.
Yeah.
I actually,
Wow.
there is a social media term for it that's way more unofficial. People that I've been seeing people use is doom scrolling. And it's a really, I think that's like a supplemental like term that would go under your heading for, headline stress, is that because you can get on your social media timeline and you can roll on and you can sort of get, and because of the way that the algorithm reads, it sees what you're up liking. And, we talked about how that can work for shopping and body image and all these other things. It also works for ideas and it works for mindsets. And that's why you see a lot of like what they call having the temperature turned up in our society. A lot of that you see on social media that may or may not represent the larger public, that's still largely debatable, because yes and no is the actual answer, but it doesn't help. And I think that sometimes, particularly I've had a lot of friends take entire breaks from social media during the quarantine explicitly because of their mental health. I'm on here crying over something that would not otherwise bother me, for exactly what you said. I can't, as much as I hate work, I don't have the two people that I, talk over the water cooler. It's an old one, but the idea is that you said it, mirror. There's somebody that you can BS with, that you don't have an overriding like commitment to as a like specific relationship. I think our friends and family, you have to be careful because we are very committed to each other at that level. Whereas you go to work, you talk to the person, you leave and come back. There's no like, there is value in that. Yeah, there is value in that acquaintance kind of relationship that you might have with someone that you get along with in a working situation.
Right. And when you're meeting with people face to face, there's like the direct social or instant social consequences. So we're all a little bit more filtered, I guess, with how we communicate with one another, as opposed to how we communicate online. There are not those immediate social consequences, and people generally end up saying much more than they would say in person.
But I would say that's changing though, in terms of people. I mean, maybe it's just because people go viral at this point, but like people are very outspoken about their ideals and what they believe in, to some extent. I believe. I think they have the courage to do that in some ways because of the political climate that we're in.
Yeah, I think people are emboldened right now for sure.
Yeah.
I think more kinds of people are being forced to use the internet at large because of quarantine, because of lockdown. Sure. A lot of those people, especially older people that were resistant to having to use the technology, found themselves in a situation where they were forced to use the technology to subsist, like to talk to their family, some people were like, okay, I guess I finally have to use the Skype. Some people were like, I've been resisting the Skype forever. I don't have an email address, even had to go sign up. It was like, if you don't have an email address, you can't see your doctor and you can't get your groceries and you can't do all this. So a bunch of people that were being dragged kicking and streaming into the 21st century had no other choice. And that has got to be, I mean, that can't be easy, as I'm someone that like is very familiar with it. So to me, it was just like, I don't know, it was a more isolated, just another Monday for me, because all my friends live on the internet. So for me, it was just like, whatever. I can't keep seeing my friends. But I understand how that's not how people's life is. So.
I totally agree with that. Can I get into like can I be selfish?
Yeah.
Can I get into my
Please.
fears a little bit? Just want to be like honest and open and kind of start this conversation of how we're going to get through this, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
My fear and my biggest fear is, and I think about it all the time, is that I don't, and I just want to say this, like, I don't care for the Democrats and I don't care for the Republicans at all. But my fear is that like Trump will not leave office at all. Like it will be, he's kind of cornered. I feel like if he leaves office, he's kind of screwed. Sorry. And why leave? So he's going to do anything he can to stay. Right? That might sound crazy to some people. It might not, but that's my fear. And I rationalize it all the time with what I see. That's the other problem, right? With what I'm seeing in the media or on social media or on any site. So yeah, that's where I'm at, guys.
Yeah.
And there's more to it, but I really wanted to go there first.
Yeah.
I totally relate. I'll just say that, and then I'll let Valerie talk.
Yeah.
I think that, I want to hear Valerie talk too, but you guys have stressed this. I'm not saying that I've almost resigned myself to the fact that if that's what happens, that's going to happen. And maybe that's the cynical portion of, where I stand in the world, but I don't think that that's going to be a simple process. So I've
yeah. I think it's going to happen, Mal. Like, I think it's going to happen.
I guess I'm afraid of it, but I'm not afraid. Like you guys, when I see in you two is genuine fear that I don't share for that. It's not that I don't have fear. It's just not that thing. That's not the thing that incites it in me. There's other things. So for me, it's like, and I want to break that down because I think that that's just shades of the whole same fear, frankly, at the end of the day. So
Valerie, what do you think about that fear?
Well, I'd like to know a little bit more from Kat, and it sounds like, Julia, you have the same or a similar type of fear. Can you tell us a little bit more, like unpack that a little bit? Tell us a little bit more about how that fear is impacting you. Is it related to your anxiety? Are you finding yourself in election stress disorder type symptoms? How is that impacting your lives?
I'll go really, really quickly. Excuse me. I think it affects everything I think about. Like, should I stay in this country? Are we living in a time of, let's say, like passive Germany? Like, is this a time where we need to make a decision to like get out or not? It's like these really crazy fears of, do I need to have a plan? I need to have decisions made. I need to have rations. I feel like I'm all over the place. Julia.
Okay. Yeah, no, I relate. My family's the same way. We're looking at options outside the country as far as where we would go and what would be most feasible, and where we could take our dogs and all that. And it's very real. I think I've definitely been having insomnia, and I've noticed I'm up at night just mulling things over. Just sick with worry about that happening and the country being destabilized and things devolving into violence, and lots of fears around that.
Yeah, well, I think that's the first step, is to kind of validate you guys and validate yourselves as well, that the results of this election coming up and what's going on right now, they're real, and it impacts us, and we all have these real, genuine fears and anxieties, whatever side of the political spectrum that you're on. And so yeah, kind of first step is to validate that, and I think that there's so many moving parts to this, so I'll try to grasp one here. I think it's important to remember to focus on, and I'm sure you guys have tried this, but to focus on what you can and cannot control, as far as your day-to-day anxiety processing, or just emotional processing of this. Because yes, it is a big issue. It is something that, oh my gosh, that always freaks me out when you put me on the big screen.
I told told you.
Talk about anxiety.
We forgot to warn you. I'm sorry.
That's hilarious. It's funny that you say that. I even said in a meeting the other day that we should warn our guests going forward about the big screen because it freaks me out. And it was one of those things where I wanted to make a mental note because it's just like earphones and the big screen. I was like, those are the two things we should put on a checklist to remind our guests.
Well, it's just so funny. I'm so sorry. I'm looking at your faces when I talk to you, and then all of a sudden there's my face. And I'm like, ah!
I won't do that. I won't do it again.
No, it's okay. It's totally fine.
You warned me first.
So yeah, talk about anxiety processing for myself. So yeah, kind of getting back to the issue of control, really kind of breaking down what we do and don't have control over. And I know that part of that is like, okay, well, I don't have control over this, and that's what's giving me anxiety is because I can't control it. So having kind of those backup plans in your head of like, okay, well, what would I do in that situation? Would I move? Would I, moving out of the country might not be very feasible for a lot of people. If it is for you and that would help you in your mental health, then yeah, why not? There's moving to different states that are a little bit more aligned with your own values and your beliefs or political ideals. Those are kind of like very big steps, big steps that you can take, but kind of breaking that down a little bit day to day, take it day by day. Like nobody knows what's going to happen next week. Yeah, nobody knows what's going to happen. Even if that does happen, if for example, you're with your fear, if Trump stays in office, even if that happens, is the whole country going to be completely turned upside down overnight? He's been in office 4 years. Things have changed for sure. The climate is what it is, but did that happen in a heartbeat, in an instant? So kind of like giving yourself a little bit of that time and comfort, that, okay, I will have time to make a decision and a choice if that were to happen, or to wait and feel it out and see what's going on. And what can I control today? Can I control how many people are going out and voting? Can I control whether or not, Trump supporters are having their rally down the street from my house? No, but I can control what I'm doing day to day. I can control how much of this I saturate myself with. We've got to think about, kind of remember simpler times. I don't know how old you guys are, but I might be aging myself a little bit, back to when we just had a newspaper. And the only way that we were to know about what was going on in the world was when we read the newspaper the next morning, or when we saw it on the evening news that night. We didn't have this constant influx of 24/7 news networks and, social media and just everything in your face constantly. Like, our brains are not wired and designed to take that kind of constant influx of information, and it's not healthy. So I think separation, knowing what is and is not within your control, and just giving yourself that space and time to not be thinking about those things, can be really healthy.
Yeah, this election definitely feels out of my control in a way that past elections haven't. Like, it really feels like it's like so all engulfing. And I think, I love what you said about knowing what you can and can't control. And I've just been trying to focus on the things that I know I can control, like back to basics, like taking my dog for a walk in the morning. And I know I can control doing that, and making sure I get at least a few minutes of sunlight, every day. And
get that vitamin D, girl.
Yeah, you gotta get it.
Super important, actually.
No, I'm being completely honest right now, because people are having a vitamin D deficiency.
I know it's bad. I mean, even it's already an issue for people with physical and, with physical disabilities and all these things. It's one of the things that almost all of my doctors and counselors, like, immediately, and you're getting outside though, right? And I'm like, I have two working breed dogs. So I have a terrier and a German Shepherd. I get plenty of sunlight, because if I don't, they'll drive me mental.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, or like structuring my day.
Yeah.
Like, so that I have like
Absolutely.
a daily routine and sticking with that. And doing those things really helps me feel like less out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing that you do have control over your day and over those routines.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, getting back to basics, focusing on our self-care,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on the 4 pillars of self-care. Are you getting the right balance of nutrition and enough? Are you getting enough sleep? And really enough sleep, not the amount of sleep that you have resorted to because of your work demands and family schedule, but enough sleep that you biologically really need. Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting your exercise? And do you have stress management with all of that? I guess that was 5 pillars, but so
I think the more
4 or
pillars, the
5.
better.
I think the better, yeah.
I mean,
So if you think about like the 4 pillars, and this is whether we're talking about election stress or any other type of mental health condition, or really just functioning in day-to-day life, if you have those 4 pillars, you kind of think of them like pillars on a chair. If one of them is not there, what happens if one of your, legs of a chair isn't there and you're just sitting on 3? It's kind of wobbly, right? If you take away 2, it's almost impossible to stay up. 3, you're crashing over. 4, you are flat on the ground. So you need those foundational elements: sleep, stress management, exercise, and nutrition. And water goes in part of the nutrition, I think. In order to be able to just function and cope with these things, just basic daily functioning, you need those things in place. So getting back to basics and focusing on self-care, making sure all of that is in place, getting outside, like you said, getting that vitamin D, all of those things will help you cope that much better.
I'm about to drop a bit of a bummer here, but also because it's really important. I'm going because it is something that I think people just need to be aware of, because they are going to start to feel a little grumpy. So from Tuesday, where we are, we've got daylight savings coming up this weekend.
I know.
And it's the shorter. So the daylight gets shorter, and you can already feel it. And I know that it's already happening to me. And I definitely have the seasonal affected portion of my, PTSD and everything. And I know I've had it my whole life now that I fully understand what that means and what it is. But I can already feel it. And for me, it's not just as simple as like turning the clock back in the hours. I have to change my medicine back an hour, and I have to do because I can't, that just because the clock changes doesn't mean your biological body changes. So you have to physically give your medicine, like with epilepsy, especially missing your dose at a set time is a problem. So I have to turn my medicine back with my clock. Well, it means taking my medicine earlier, and it makes me sleepier. And so I have these complicating factors right before Tuesday. So I've even kind of been training myself to get up / stay in bed to the right time in anticipation. But that's years of experience. And I usually have I've gotten into the habit of warning my friends, because I had a great psychiatrist turn me on to sleep cycles and the circadian rhythm and all of those things and how they do play into mental health. And he gave me a few pointers, like turning on all the lights when it's, this is a good one for you guys. So when you first get up in the morning at 7 o'clock, when it's dark though, on these dark days, when you're getting up at a normal time for you, but it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, flip on a bunch of lights. It simulates daylight and I did this when I was working as a camp counselor, and I had to be at work at 5:30, and I would go downstairs because Bob wasn't there and flip on all the lights, and it would help me get awake to get on the road, to get to my classes and all this stuff. And it's interesting, but just turn on a bunch of your lights until the daylight comes up, and it actually does have a simulating factor for you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Can I totally nerd out for a second?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
And,
Can I put you on full
welcome
screen?
that.
I'm putting you on full screen while you nerd out. Just
okay,
FYI.
go ahead. Why not?
Do it.
Okay.
Do it.
So I know I can't see you right now, Mel, and I know that you're into this stuff because it's neuroscience, and I know that you love it too. But the reason for that, there's a structure in the brain. It's actually right here. If you were to go straight back through the center of your eyes, it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
Nice.
I don't know why I remember that, of all things. But that is the structure in your brain that when light hits it, so light comes through your eyes and it hits this structure and it tells your brain it's time to be awake. And that's what makes us diurnal beings instead of nocturnal. Nocturnal beings, that process is the opposite. So they're awake at night and they sleep during the day. So it's this structure that tells us that, kind of guides those circadian rhythms and tells us, hey, it's daytime. It's time to be awake. There's light. And that's one of the reasons this is kind of a good segue to, if you're looking at your phone, for example, or your computer late into the evening, that can really mess up your circadian rhythms because it's telling your brain.
So much sense because it's wired into your brain.
It is biologically wired into your brain that when light hits that structure, it wakes everything up. It says it's time to be up right now. There's a reason. There's light here. We have to be awake. We have to survive. It's the survival instincts. And when there's dark and, our eyes are closed and light is not going back there, then it says, okay, you can wind down now.
That's so cool.
That is
thanks for letting me nerd out for a little bit.
Thanks for that information. That's great information to know.
Me so well, yeah.
So
but
now
it makes sense. It's good to go. Yeah.
Sorry. Now the reason why, like when they say don't look at your phone until, up until an hour before you go to bed. That's why. It's because it's a neurological process that's happening when that light, especially the blue light, is hitting you.
Who can do that?
I just want to say really fast, Joseph, you're awesome. Thank you for all the great comments that you've been leaving. And hi, Desdar. Those are our regulars. And we love you guys. So thank you so much.
And Kia. Hello, Kia.
Oh, and of course, Kia. Hi.
Don't leave Kia out. Kia's always
I'm
here.
sorry. She's always here.
Actually, it's really good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us for our special guest and our special
election night special.
Yes.
So how does the super chiasmatic nucleus relate to election is probably what you're all wondering.
I think we should all be doing this more often. You are just giving us great tips.
Part of your self-care.
I love what you talked about self-care. And, instead of scanning our phones right now for headlines updated every second that we don't actually need, we can be practicing self-care instead and doing something nourishing for ourselves, like
yoga and meditation.
Like yoga and meditation, your favorites, Katrina. Like
I'm sorry.
Playing with our dogs, or taking a bubble bath, or listening to your favorite music. Do these things that nourish you rather than constantly scanning that phone, especially at night in bed when it's going to make you not sleep, since we now know that about the nucleus, whatever.
Julia, though, you just said something that hit like a nerve in my body. And that's I've been listening to Queen and bands that I haven't listened to in so long. And I'm not a music person, but it's been helping so much. Just having music on in the background
That's
has
awesome.
been really, it just kind of takes your mind to a different place, right? You forget that.
It's like a sensory experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find yourself an activity that you can just fully immerse yourself in. Have you ever done an activity or project or a sport, or maybe it's work, I don't know, where you're just forced to think about that and only that?
Yeah.
For example, I do aerial acrobatics. Okay.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so fun. It's part of my self-care. So when I'm climbing up on the rope, if I'm thinking about anything other than how to stay up on that rope and not fall on my face, I will fall. I am forced. My brain is forced to be in that moment. It's a form of meditation, because meditating is just being present where you are, fully and truly present. So find something where you have to be in that moment, you have no other choice. And for those of us who have a hard time, maybe we do have anxiety and emotion that takes over our brains sometimes. If you have a hard time selecting and choosing what you're thinking and feeling, which is very hard for all of us, or many of us, then find an activity like that forces you into that moment. And really, really think, when you were talking about scrolling through the headlines, ask yourself, how helpful is this for me right now? Is this fueling me? Or could I be doing something that would fuel me? Limit your time, say, okay, I'll take 20 minutes right now. I'll scroll through just to kind of stay abreast of what's going on in the world right now. But then I'm going to choose to do something different. It's all about choice.
Yeah, I think it's so important to disconnect every now and again. You know, we forget that we can disconnect. I think I forget that it's even an option. And it's so important to take those moments and because we know for a fact that constantly being plugged in raises our stress levels. I mean, that's been proven. And so to not take those opportunities to take a step back from everything is really bad for our mental health.
So I'll give you guys a little confession of sort of where my fear lies, because it's a little different than where you guys are. And it's it lies in the fact that I have been a kid who's been into politics and history for a long time in my life. So I was telling my mom who I was going to vote for. I'm like 8 years old. Like, you know, it's like way back in the Bush Clinton election or whatever. There you go. You want to talk about dating yourself. And and I went to college before all of the things that happened to me. I went to school for politics, and I was going to do law school, and I was very into the Constitution. And so usually where I find my solace is to go do the research on the laws and the politics and the history and where this stands in the history of everything. And way this one's got me down is because there's no history for what's happening right now because of all the outliers. Catastrophic climate change, a pandemic at the same time that all these things are happening. I usually go to the scholars and the experts here because the scientists are the guys that I'm like, yay, awesome. And they're like, no, we you go to the economists and they're like, maybe this will happen. Nobody has concrete answers for this one because there aren't concrete answers for this one. Because just like many, many times in life, whether it's your personal experience or it's a grand scheme, humanity deal, is that in the title of the great Dan Carlin's book is "The End is Always Near." Like you never know that you're living, which time you're living in. You could, be one of those people that lives in the window where nothing goes on in your entire life. Or you could be one of the people that saw like what my grandparents saw, where my grandfather fought in World War II. And he was part of a generation of people that had essentially like an entire generation that had post-traumatic stress in one way or another because of what happened to the world. And I do worry. I worry about like the little kids that I know are being born or growing up in this world. That's a big fear stressor for me because they're just little kids and they're just trying to, and they don't think about or know about what's going on. And it's like, I think of this for psychiatrists, talk therapists, and then for parents is like, how do you explain to someone, how do you tell someone that it's going to be okay when even you aren't sure if it's going to be okay?
But kids know about Trump. Like my
course they
niece
do.
and nephew know about Trump.
Of course they do.
It's not, that's what's crazy, right? Like
my background is early childhood development all the way up through tweens. So I worked with kids as young as 2 all the way up to 13 and 14 for, before I had my, brain surgeries and everything. That was the 13, 14 years in deep doing that, organizing, day camps, sports camps, doing nonprofit work. I always used to tell it's not about like you can't treat a kid like a kid. They're just small humans with no experience. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking to a 5-year-old, I'm not talking to a child as you would sort of think of it in the trope. I'm talking to a 5-year-old human who has 5 years of experience being a human and is not fully formed. And so that is why I enjoyed childcare because I enjoyed helping people make that connection but kids aren't dumb. And I used to tell people that all the time and they would laugh at me, even as young as like a 2.5-year-old would come to me about some like grander scheme of issue where you're like, how do you even know about that? I'm not even the kid's parent. And I'm like, how do you know about that? I don't want you to know about that. The horror. But they're not dumb. They get it. And that's survival too. I think that when we are out in the tribes or in the wildernesses or whatever, a child has to basically, once a puppy or a calf or a little guy they have to survive too. So they have to be smart and they have to be able to pick up on it. I can't even imagine. It's not easy for my self-esteem. I'm a full-grown adult. And
Yeah.
and I have a lot of friends that I love who have had babies recently or had in the last year a baby. And it's like, for the mother's health, I was concerned. And now I know the moms are healthy, but they've got these young children. One of them's about to turn 1. It's like, what kind of world?
Exactly.
And that's tough and that's hard. And again, I'm not even the mom of a lot of these kids. And I look at this and go, this is not the world I want to leave for kids. And this is not what I want them to have to go through. And I think it's sad that an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old has to kind of have their entire childhood truncated by a bunch of selfish adults. And that does make me, I have mental health issues over that, because that makes me angry, and that's probably my background, but it makes me mad. I'm like, we can do better. And it's really irresponsible that we're not doing better.
Here,
I can relate. Yeah, I can relate. I just want to say, a lot of the reason we don't have children is because what kind of world would we be bringing them up in,
Val's a mom, so she's like, oh dear.
No, but that's the thought that
spot.
happened. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a concern that I know that I have as a parent too. It's actually part of the reason why we don't have the news on at our house. I think that it is my job as a parent to translate for my kids, to let them know about what's going on, but in an age appropriate way, so that they can start to learn how to cope. I don't think our job as parents or adults is to always paint this picture that the world is this beautiful place and you're never going to get hurt. I think it's our job as parents to teach kids how to cope with everyday, the everyday realities of what this world really is. And I think that's, at least for my patients that I've seen, that's a big cause of anxiety, is when we expect things to go well all the time. And then they don't. It's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You can
Having a
curse.
grown-up. It's the election special. We're going to have a grown-up show.
And that was a great comment. Thank you, Joseph. That was good.
Be the change we wish to see. That's exactly right.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's only so much shielding that we can do with our kids. And I don't think much of that shielding is really healthy. I think we should translate it and filter things while they're still young and are still learning how to cope with things, and they're learning how to trust. And it's our choice of what we, as parents, what we surround our children with. But at the same time, we need to be able to be creative with this. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen the Facebook memes or just the quotes from Fred Rogers.
Mhm.
When there was a tragedy that would happen.
Oh, we love Mr. Robin.
I know. What would he say? Would he shield the children's eyes and turn them away? No, he said,
He'd talk
look
about
at the
it.
helpers. There's always people to help. You can be that person to help. And just to restore your faith in humanity, focus on that there are those people still there. And your Facebook or social media or, Google, whatever algorithms that are sending you these doomsday headlines all day long are not going to show you these helpers unless you start clicking on those. It's like what you choose to surround yourself with. I'm not saying those other things don't happen. They do. Right. But just how much of that can we really expose and saturate ourselves to? And that goes for what we do for our children as well, and what we choose to expose them to.
I think that
at the end of the day, I think it's so important to look for the positives, like you said, and to remember that that there is hope is not dead.
Right. Let's take this.
Have to look a little harder right now, but maybe it's the next generations. Maybe it's these children's respect for the environment that they're already exhibiting that gives you a little bit of hope. Or maybe it's the droves of people that are already early voting that gives you that glimmer. Or maybe it's the overall positive response there was to Black Lives Matter, and maybe that kind of like gave you some of that hope reborn. But I'm not saying to be a Pollyanna, like you said, it's not about playing pretend or acting like bad things don't happen. But if you look for positives and not just negatives, then I think it can definitely help our mental state overall.
And
I've been doing the thing where I use the local media as my best, so I don't watch a lot of mainstream news anyway. I'm not big on that because it just makes me angry. But I use the local media here to try and find things in my local community in Detroit and Detroit metro area where people are doing things. And there are a lot of people, even in my very community, who have, the fire station, the volunteer fire guys immediately transitioned to doing groceries for people when this whole thing started. And they've never stopped doing that, whether it's not on the news or whatever anymore. They're still out there doing that every week for the seniors that need it in our community. And
I mean, not just that,
we can't presuppose that everybody is terrible, because that's it. It's if we presuppose that everybody in our country is terrible, then that's the end of the conversation, and there's no good to be had and whatever else. But I think that most people want to do the right thing. I don't think that most people want to be amped up like that. I don't think that they do.
Just another plug for this. Local media and news is hilarious. Like, if you've ever watched your local news channel, it's hilarious.
Depends on where you are and how the production value is.
No, but the worse, the better. I mean, the worse production value, the better.
My sister and I have this thing that we do where we share headlines from, especially where she is, because there's some pretty hilarious ones. Like, I mean, this is, not exactly hilarious, but about like how these two brothers, one of them shot another one over the last cheeseburger at Thanksgiving or some silly thing like that. Or, how a bunch of state troopers unloaded on a porcupine recently, but they're always put in such weird context. So they're essentially the Not the Onion headlines that she and I send each other from our local communities, and she wins most of the time.
And I get all the good Florida man ones.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. You got Florida man.
I got Florida man. Joseph said, life has turned me into a cynic. I try to be positive, though, but it is definitely a battle. And I agree with that. Like, I completely agree with that.
I'll give you my George Carlin quote. Inside every cynic is a disappointed idealist. So George Carlin was a wise man. He was a wise man, okay?
He really was.
Speaking of Florida and your local headlines, Mel, I think one thing that I know we've talked about before is sort of geographical differences that we're seeing with the election as far as responses to the election and to Corona and all of that. So I wondered if we could talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, Florida's completely open. Like, we're an open state. So, like, bars, restaurants, they're welcoming you.
And no one has to wear a mask.
And nobody
no
has
one has
to
wear a mask anywhere.
Kind of crazy. I also went to drop off my ballot. I think this is kind of how it came into discussion. We were talking about it. I went to drop off my ballot at the local library, and there were hundreds of Trump supporters everywhere without a mask. And I was really overwhelmed by that. And I didn't expect it, although I feel like I should have been expecting that. Yeah, that was crazy. But that's what's happening here in Florida.
Yes, our lovely governor opened the entire state.
DeSantis. He's wonderful. Mel, what about you?
Go ahead.
I'd like to hear what, and Val, you go ahead. And
Oh, no, I wanted to hear your take too about your part of the country. We talked a little bit about that, but also kind of this reminded me of our conversation the other day when we were preparing for this of like our expectations.
Absolutely.
Expectations of like, would you really expect a group of Trump supporters to be wearing masks in their protest or rally type of thing? It's like, no, I mean, but at the same time, that doesn't have to influence your own personal values, standards, and integrity. Like if you would wear a mask or if you expect people just in general to wear a mask, that's okay. Just kind of tweeze that out just for as far as your anxiety processing, like we were talking about, tweeze that out. Like, okay, I guess at the end of the day, no, I would not expect a group of Trump rally supporters to be wearing masks or to have that respect or consideration or however you want to categorize that. But I do expect that is my value, and it's okay that there's a difference
to have that. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think that, because Valerie made that point the other day, and I think that was a really good thing that I took away from just our conversation, was that it's okay that you have a level of responsibility for yourself and that you expect that from others. Mm-hmm. Because, I think one of my bigger issues is just like this: you're a grown-ass person, put the mask on and shut up. It's not that big of a deal. It's a very small thing. And,
wear the damn mask.
And I don't want to, I'm not one of these people that's going to go, and I know it just depends on where you are. So you guys ask, like, where are you? Like, what is it going to, I know you said you guys will get the evil eye if you're wearing the mask.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll get told off.
Here you will get, I don't want to say that you don't get told off by the right wing too much for wearing the mask. You might get people laughing at you, getting in your face about it. Sometimes you get jeered. It's not an every time thing. You'll get equally as many people. And here's my thing. This is like my background. I don't think it's my business to tell somebody what to do. I'm not the person it's a big difference when my husband, who's a sales manager on a sales floor, is having to tell somebody that they need to put a mask on because their business is subject to fines. That's his job. He has to do that. It is not my business when I am in a place to tell somebody else what to do with their person. Am I going to give them the stink eye? More than likely, because that's my instinct. Come on, man. Put the mask on. That's going to be my instinctive reaction. But I'm not this person who's going to like saunter over and be like, hey, you need to put on a mask because of all the reasons. And it's like, this person knows all the reasons. I can, but it's like, I don't think it's my business to tell people what to do. I do believe that there should be a minimum standard expected of my neighbors to do the thing like that. And I would say here, so in Michigan, because we've had a lot of our counties have been badly affected, and the city of Detroit has been badly affected. Most of the people here tend to do, it's close to 80% of the people here in Michigan not only support the mask mandates, but support our governor. And now I live in a state where the governor has been literally targeted. And that was my problem, is like I had said to you guys the other day, is that one hit very close to home. So Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, was threatened by a group of militia where they were going to kidnap her and
it's so ridiculous
and execute her in public. Like, so publicly, it's the sitting governor of a state of the United States of America. And this thing came to fruition. And then the president of the United States decided that it was going to be okay to go out there and sort of parrot the rhetoric behind the group of people that did that, which, again, my expectation is not like, I'm not surprised that that's how he reacted, given his history of sexism. But as a female, I had a moment that I don't usually have because I'm very fortunate and grateful that I'm not in those situations. But at a very these are people, and I know they're people in my community because I've had run-ins with law enforcement that were inappropriate, and inappropriate things were said to me before, where I actually had a knee-jerk reaction of this is really scary. This is a woman in power who was threatened with kidnapping and execution. And then the person in charge of our country essentially endorsed the guys that were behind it. And that created way more anxiety than I expected. It gave me a kind of a gut twist that I wasn't expecting. And so just like when you showed up, Katrina, and we're like, I think that more when you said it to us, it was that you weren't expecting so many supporters to be there necessarily. And it to be such a rally, a Trump rally.
It was where you could go to vote. I didn't expect that. Yeah,
right.
It was weird.
You don't expect picketing and what amounts to voter intimidation when you go to the polls. Most of the time you go drop your poll off, it's a big long line of people and some grandmas filling out the ballot cards. Now you're going here and you've got guys with ARs standing on the corner, and that's not normal. And it certainly doesn't make for a secure feeling. I mean, we had guys storm our Capitol with, automatic weapons here. And what my problem with Michigan is that there's a lot of blue here, and there's a lot of liberal-minded good people here that help each other and do good things. But there's this contingent, this outlier, this group of, militiamen that people conflate them with the Michigan militia, which is not the same exact thing. These are right wingers. These are the types that do all the stuff you hear about in the news with the corruption. And that's scary for me. That's what makes it. I mean, fortunately, we as a state had voted on mail balloting two election cycles ago. So we were going to have absentee voting for everybody starting this election cycle anyway, because we had decided as a state that we wanted to do that. Washington State has had mail-in ballots for a long time, because I was there when it switched over back in the early aughts, and I loved that system. So when I moved away from Washington State, it was actually bummed me out, because it was such a wonderful system that you guys have out there, where it was, you get the mail-in and you get the drop boxes, or you just, postmark it, and they've got it streamlined. So states like Washington have been doing mail balloting for, it's been it's got to be like a decade now, right? Darn close.
Oh, at least, yeah.
So
I think you should just come back to Washington, Mel.
Yeah, Amy.
We have a good comment from Zanza Toys. Hey, Adrian. And it says, I kind of freaked out yesterday when ACB got confirmed. I knew it was going to happen intellectually, but still having a locked-in 6-3 pro-fascist majority is a real gut punch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's scary times. And the fact that there's no script for it that's, for me, I'm the kid who finds my mental health by, looking up the science. I mean, even with the pandemic, I've kept myself sane from the pandemic by not listening to the psychotic stuff that's out there in the media, but by actually going to the Johns Hopkins site and reading the science and talking to my friends who are doctors and saying, and I had a good friend who's a doctor who's been on the front lines of this since the beginning and has sort of been saying what doctors have known all along was going to happen is happening. And she said to me a few times now, and so I have to not be too bummed. It is going to get bad, but we are also going to get through this. And she's there every day, and she has a child at home that she knows she goes to work and does her job, and she loves her job, but she also loves her son. But she said, yes, it's going to get bad, but it's going to get better too. And we are going to do the things that they're talking about with vaccines and stuff. And I'm like, okay, if she can say that to me,
right,
I have to keep believing it.
Yeah,
yes, but don't think it's coming soon. I mean, I can't get over the fact that people are saying it's going to come right away.
No, it's
That's
November.
It's going to take a long time.
It's November.
No, to that end, I think I love what you said, Valerie, about managing our expectations, and I think that's such an excellent way to cope. But to that end, I think we need to be expecting. I know probably some of us already are, but I mean, I think more people just need to expect that there are going to be delays in the election results, and that this isn't going to be decided overnight. It could be days or possibly weeks before we have an actual outcome. And I think if we go into it expecting that, because if it catches us off guard, that's the type of thing that could send you into a tailspin. But if you go into it expecting that and prepared mentally, then that can really help your mental state overall, I think.
I think you need to be prepared for anything can happen. I really do. I think your mind needs to be open that who knows?
Right. And I think
Just
along with this is kind of thinking back at the last election, okay, when Trump was elected. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. I was just something weird with my headphones. But thinking back when Trump was elected, it was really close, as I recall, right? Am I right about that? It was very, very close. So
the popular vote wasn't close, but the electoral situation was close.
Okay.
And I'm going to leave it there because our election situation is so complicated. That's a whole different show.
Right. But it just goes to show that, okay, let's say it was 50-50, you know, or even like 60-40 or whatever. That many people, at least voters, agree with you. That many people who did not vote for him last time, or, you know, maybe even more now that they've seen him in office and they're not very happy with his performance and what's been happening to the country since then, agree with you. You are not alone, right? So that's kind of the message that I'm hoping people will have, is that the more that we talk about these things and voice your fears and your anxieties and concerns, the more you're going to find people that are right on the same page with you.
Yeah, I guess though that like one thing that really gets me down right now is that people seem so stuck on what they think is exactly right and like the only right way. And, you know, people aren't listening to each other. It really feels like, and they're just locked into their closed-mindedness. And it just feels really ugly right now and really disheartening.
It is, absolutely. And I think it's important to name those feelings and to be able to sit with them and know that it's okay to have those feelings and that we can't control what other people do or say, and we can't change their minds. So at what point do you stop expecting that to happen? You know, find that boundary for yourself and know how far you're willing to push and how much of your mental health is worth investing into those other people rabble rousing amongst themselves and being jerks to each other. Like, how much of that is going to take over your peace of mind? That is within your control, you know, that little piece of it. But naming those feelings, I think, is so important, and saying it is disheartening. And that's
Valerie, okay. What are you doing with your clients right now as far as I know probably these things that we're talking about, but like, are you doing like DBT with them, or like what sort of techniques are you using to kind of get people through this election anxiety?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We're actually going really back to basics with DBT and readdressing mindfulness. There's a really great website that actually has a number of DBT modules, and it walks you through it. It explains it, like it writes out the steps of what to do in each module. And it also has a video. So if you're more of like an audio visual type learner, somebody is explaining this to you, and just hearing somebody talk about it and what their experience is really helpful. But the website is called dialecticalbehaviortherapy.com. Maybe we can.
Yeah, you can link me that video and I'll drop it, or
I can add it to the description.
It is really fantastic. It is, I think it's one of the more like basically laid out ways that I've seen DBT so far. They have the four main areas of DBT at the top. So mindfulness, emotional regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, and the last one that I can't remember at the moment, but
Final Jeopardy.
I know, right? And then in each one of those segments, it has a number of modules. So what I've been doing with my patients is I'm walking them through those modules, and we're kind of doing like one week by week or one module per week. And they seem very, very basic, but that's the point. And what it's doing is it's retraining our brains to be able to choose what we are attending to in any given moment. Kind of like a little analogy that I give people is, let's say that you're at a play and you're watching a group of people on stage. The lights go down, the spotlight zones in to the main actor, right? And then the spotlight can expand out and include the backdrop and all these other people and all these other things that are going on. So you are in charge of the spotlight. You are zoning in to choose to focus and attend to that main actor. Or maybe you want to focus on the other actor. So in the analogy, the actors represent or symbolize thoughts and feelings that come into your mind. So when you're meditating, when you're doing anything during the day, a thought comes into your mind, a worry, what do you do with it? Do you let it take over? It's really easy for that to happen. Or do you say, okay, I'm going to choose, I see you thought, I'll talk to you later, but I'm going to choose to focus on this task that I'm doing right now. So yeah, another long answer to your question, really taking a step back and re-honing in those mindfulness skills that are kind of the foundation to DBT and the foundation of choosing and to what we attend to and what we think about in any given moment.
That's really lovely.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's easier said than done, obviously.
Always. But
Yeah.
we will put that in the about or whatever section below at the end of the show.
Okay.
And before I forget, also in the About section is a link to our Discord if you guys want to hop on our Discord.
Yes, thank you.
That was good.
Yeah, join our Discord and talk to us. Come on the show. We'd be happy to have you. Like, subscribe, comment.
Do it.
Anything else?
I had one more question for Valerie, and it was just simply like, so you and your colleagues are human beings also. How are you guys doing? And because I think of we hear a lot about, and believe me, doctors, nurses, first responders, you guys are the people. I don't think that it's just like with all the other things, we don't include mental illness and we don't include mental health providers in that sort of first responder, doctors and nurses sort of. I think it's just as tough for you guys right now. I've noticed with my own therapist, she and I have almost a moment of like separate time to talk to one another as people, where it's not treatment time, but it's actually, we've spent a few minutes of having because she has genuine anxiety too. And so she, it's like we have a minute to take, and we have it, within reason. Obviously, it's because of the nature of our relationship. I've been with her for a long time, but we sort of have a moment where it's like, can you believe this politics bull crap, And so I'm curious to know sort of like,
that's so weird.
how are you guys doing? Like, how is this treating, your profession, and what are you guys doing to how are you dealing?
Yeah. And I don't know if I can speak for all mental health practitioners, of course, but at least for me, it's a challenge, and I'm doing my best, just like you guys, to keep on top of my own self-care and mental health. There are lots of therapists out there that specialize in seeing other therapists.
That's so interesting to me.
That's a specialty?
It is.
Think about it.
Oh my God. I know you're right, but I would have
never thought about it.
Never.
So I make sure that I have my own therapy. Actually, I was just in my own therapy session right before this call, just to kind of make sure I
want to talk to a therapist who's a therapist for therapists.
I love that. I freaking love that.
So in that regard, yes, it's been a challenge because we also see first responders. In what they are seeing we're first responders in a sense, seeing first responders and what they're seeing on the front lines, so that's been a little bit of a challenge, but at the same time, there's this beautiful sense of like camaraderie that's forming with that. And like Mel, I love that you and your therapist have that moment of just human to human interaction. And I'm seeing a lot more of that in my own sessions with people that is such a need right now. Before we get into the therapy or, all the nitty gritty, we just kind of talk. And I think so many people just need that time right now.
It's got boundaries on it, but it's perfect.
But there are boundaries, because like that always makes me so, like with my therapist, that always made me so uncomfortable. Of having that, like going outside of that boundary, It's
just this specific therapist. I haven't found a lot of therapists. It's just because of, I think it's her age and her background and the conversations we've had. We're able to essentially have a moment out of character and then back in without that being.
But the fact that we're even saying that, it's like you're in character, and you kind of
I don't know
are. When you go see your therapist, you kind of are. Like, you know what you're going to do, and like, yeah,
Right. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
I think it's a healthy hobby if you do it right. So
That's true.
Right.
You do it right.
I go to therapy for my hobby. I like that.
I'm not a therapist, but I play one on TV.
No, but that is something that's like so obvious, but something I'd never thought about before talking to you, Valerie, is just that therapists are people too, and they have their own biases. You know, they're going to have bias, and they're going to have their own history of experiences and traumas and all different things. And it's like, duh, but it's just, I never like sat and thought about that with any of my therapists.
Yeah.
No, I was literally. Oh, sorry.
No,
I
it's
was
okay.
literally like texting Julia today, and I was like, that, like, like it just came to my head. Like, we had a conversation with Valerie, and she was saying these statements, like, you know, that just might be my bias or the environment that I was raised in, or this and that. And I'm like, I never even thought of that. Like, that never would have come to my mind.
Katrina's like the little kid who just saw her teacher out of the classroom at the grocery
At the grocery
store.
store. Yeah, totally.
He's like, I don't know what to do.
Totally. It was a really
Mrs.
like an
Schwartz,
eye
you
opener.
exist in the world.
I thought
We're
you
not
lived behind
robots.
that desk.
I can't.
Hi, how can I help you today? Yeah, we definitely, and that's a big part of our training is, gosh, I remember that, like talking about all these different case scenarios, and then everybody was to give, okay, what's your bias with this? If you don't know you have one, stop and think about it, because you do. Everybody has a bias, and it's not about, like, as a therapist, you know, sitting there saying I have no bias, I have no opinions. You know, it's about, okay, my opinion on this is this person's is that, this is where we differ, but how can I make sure I help this person? You know, the focus is always on them. So it's this delicate balance the whole time of being aware of what you think, but not letting that be the focus of the conversation. You know, it's the 80-20 rule. They talk 80% of the time and you talk 20% of the time. So it's, just little insights into the job.
I love it. I love
A peek behind the curtain.
Like, it's so fascinating. It's just
Well, and it also lets you know that the reason that you've had the good ones is because you can't, that's not something you go get into like, yeah, I'm going to go be that. Like, yeah. It's not a movie star or a stunt double or you know what I'm saying? It's just like,
Right.
it's, I mean, that's intense stuff. That's just like one little piece of like just what you have to sit down and actually go like, I'll just imagine all the like scenarios you have to run through over and over about that very thing. Like, you don't do that unless you really have a passion for trying to help people be better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a hard.
That doesn't sound like fun to me at all, honestly. Can I go watch some wrestling or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't really do that in the middle of a session.
I know. I mean, I like my ending scripted. Okay, I don't like too much of this like wild card stuff. Is too much for me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, good thing our endings are kind of scripted, and
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say before I just want to say that you know, well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We were really excited about this. Yeah, thank you, Valerie. And thank you everyone watching. We were really excited to have this episode tonight and to talk to you guys about how we're feeling and see how you might be feeling. And it's been a really good give and take. But I just want to say that like these circumstances that we found ourselves in that are provoking all this anxiety, like it really is a unique set of circumstances that no one could have predicted, that we would have this major election in the midst of a global pandemic and an economic downturn and racial unrest. I mean, all these things have transpired to like come together. And if it feels like a lot, it's because it is a lot. So as we've said throughout the show, you're not alone. However you're feeling is normal right now, the new normal. And you're not alone. And we can all get through this together. We will get through next Tuesday. and we'll keep our eye on the positives instead of the negatives. But if we need to be negative, we can.
It's okay. You can feel whatever you want.
We'll have a big
yourself
we'll have a vent episode at some point later where we just
there you go.
we just yell a whole bunch of crap. Obscenity.
With that being said, I think this was a fabulous show. We are on hiatus next week. It's actually our first week that we don't have a show. And that's because there's an election and we want you guys to get out there. I'm not going to tell you to vote. Just do your part, however that is. That's it.
Do what you need to do to feel good.
Do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Valerie, again, thank you so much. We can't wait to have you back. And
thank you. It was so much fun. And I'm so glad that you guys had me back this time. And again, it was a really great topic. I thought it was a great conversation and I appreciate you all for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Always
everybody.
A pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
You
and I will tell you to vote, so go vote.
There we go. You got one. All right, you guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.